What's up, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I am Jabril, and I am with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing good.
And welcome to a brand new episode. We're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in games, and we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what have you been playing?
So, I'm changing it up here. I've been playing something I didn't expect to play. Also, I had no idea it came out. So, I've been playing Battletoads.
Yes.
On Xbox One. And it's interesting. It's such a weird way to think of it. I really thought I was going into the way I went into like Streets of Rage 4, where it was like super old school way with the new art style. And Battletoads, I'm happy to say, is like really fun. It's really updated. You can actually play this one. I don't die in the first stage.
Thanks.
It is brutal in certain senses, and I forgot how really campy and cartoony it is, with like just the random kicking, your foot transforms, and I understand that's a staple in the series. I don't have that reflection with Battletoads like that, where I'm like super excited when they change into wrecking balls and stuff like that on the fly. But I'm having fun with it. Again, it's on Game Pass, so I didn't have to purchase it. So I'm really gonna probably once a solid one-time playthrough for me, then I'll be okay. But I'm enjoying it. It's weird. I don't know how to feel about some of the way they're doing like a lot of the conversations and comic bookish like aspects. A little bit weird for me, but it's fun. It's again a fun little game I'm playing on the side. I can see why you could enjoy it more with like co-op people. I'm surprised they didn't give you at least one AI partner. I understand because you do have the switching between Zit, Pimple, and Rash, or whatever their names are. So I played a few hours of that, and then the other game I've been playing, surprisingly, I don't know what year it is because I'm playing old school stuff. I'm playing Samurai Jack: Battle Through Time.
Ah, I've heard a lot about this.
And my goodness, it's so good. It's so good. It's pretty much, to recap it quickly, is Devil May Cry except Samurai Jack. So it looks good. The action's really fast paced. The combos get very complicated. It's not super score based like Devil May Cry, where it's like constantly showing you that score and flashing. You do get those like at the end of the sessions of fighting the enemies, but it looks good. A lot of throwbacks. A lot of the voice actors came back to do it. It's weird because it seemed through the trailers that you were gonna just play through the 5 seasons of the show. It actually takes like a small spin-off between like one of the final episodes of the final season. It kind of branches off to do its own thing, and then I'm assuming it comes back to wrap it up. So it's interesting, but I'm having super just like a great time with it. Like, it's just a great hack and slash action game, and I didn't expect it. It's a little pricey. I don't know how it is lengthwise, but I'm super loving it.
Do they want a full 40 for it, or is it a $60?
Yeah, so they went 40. They went 40, so it is budget. I thought this game was gonna be like cheaper, like a 30, but as of right now, the polish is there.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. So the game looks super clean. The art style fits perfect. The controls are snappy. Tons of weapons, tons of items, collectibles, and all that stuff in there. Again, I just don't know what it takes to get through the game. I don't know how many missions are in there. But, it's all about that combat. There's, like, a harder difficulty to unlock. I already saw that. So I don't know what it is for, like, platinum-wise. But I'm having super, like, a great time with it. I was nervous about getting it. Then I was going to get it on Switch, and then I was like, for $40, I'd rather just get it on PlayStation, get trophies. And I am, I guess, slightly biased because I do love Samurai Jack. I mean, I love that show. So this is, like, obviously directed towards me. I'm glad I'm seeing more people talk about it, and I'm hoping it doesn't go under the radar because it's a really good game. Like, it's better than some of the other stuff I've played this year. So my time's really just been between Battletoads, Samurai Jack. So what have you been playing, though?
Yeah, so I guess since you mentioned it already, I also jumped into Battletoads.
Okay.
I enjoyed my time with it quite a bit. I'm also conflicted about like the writing, for example. I've kind of gone back and forth about whether I think the writing is corny and bad, or whether it's hyper accurate to the original game and it's just out of place since it's in 2020. So I'm in that kind of weird back and forth where it's like, I don't know if this is accurate or bad or like some hybrid of both, but gameplay wise, I think it's really fun. I like the speed of it. Obviously, comparing it to Streets of Rage 4, I think is a very apt comparison. They both, recently came out. They both have that kind of cartoony, hand-drawn animation kind of look to them. This one obviously doesn't have the weight that Streets of Rage 4 it has. It's a way faster game, way more kinetic, way more kind of combo, and you're moving all around and doing all this stuff. You have the added kind of range with the tongue mechanic and stuff like that. So there's different things you could play around with there that I really enjoyed. I did a couple levels, and generally speaking, I think I really enjoyed the time. I think they did a great job with that game. So yeah, that's Battletoads. I also played New Super Lucky's Tale that recently came to Game Pass and PlayStation 4. And I had a great time with it. And for you guys who don't know, it's a third-person action platformer, kind of mascot platformer like you'd see out of like Rare in the 90s and stuff like that. And it has, collectathon. It's the whole thing. And it's a really good time, you know what I mean? If like Hat in Time is like Mario 64, this is obviously like Banjo in many ways. Besides the fact that ukulele exists. But this one, it's polished. It looks really good. It plays really good. Very easy, I would say. It would be the only critique. But again, considering what type of game it is, it makes sense. So I'm not expecting like grueling difficulty from a little fox jumping on, little platforms to collect coins. But a great time with it. And again, if you have Game Pass, jump into Battletoads, jump into New Super Lucky's Tale. Again, you have no excuse to play these games. Throw an hour, see if you like it. I think they're doing some really cool things, kind of balancing with like a new spin on nostalgia. So it's not clunky in the same way the older ones are, but it obviously has that same spirit. So I think they killed it on that. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to bang out the entire game, but from what I understand is you can platinum New Super Lucky's Tale in like 10 hours or something like that. So it might be a game I see all the way through. It depends on how my schedule is going into September, to be honest, now that games are going to start kicking in and we're going to have new releases again. And the last game I think is really interesting, and it's something you talked a couple weeks back, I believe. The Avengers beta went public.
That's true, yep.
And so I played that for the first time, and I would like to say before I start, I did not beat it. It's way longer than I thought it was going to be.
It's a huge chunk of game.
Yeah, I have to commend them for a couple things. First off, I'm gonna commend them for a free beta. The amount of content they've given you is probably the most I've ever seen in a free beta. So I want to shout out them for that. I also want to say that I've been very critical of this game. Very critical. I think it didn't look right. It didn't look like it was running great. I didn't understand what they were going for. I had significant concerns about this in relation to other superhero entries that were going to go. So now I finally got my hands on it, and I want to say, generally speaking, I enjoyed myself. Do I think it's a perfect game? No. Do I think there's some obvious glaring issues that I have with it? Yes, but I think generally speaking, they're on the right track for, I think, what they're trying to do, and I think I understand what they're trying to do a lot better. So I want to give them credit that I did enjoy myself, and I want to keep it real with you guys. I think that the whole loot mechanic of it, and upgrading your character like that almost Division style loot grind is weird to me for a superhero game. I guess that's just gonna require me getting a little bit used to it. Just adding gear to like the Hulk or Kamala Khan is weird to me, but again, maybe that's something I'll get used to with time. Obviously it runs a little weird, but again, it's a beta, so I'm not gonna hold that against them. I still think the characters look a little strange, but it certainly affects certain characters more than others. So Kamala Khan to me looks completely fine. I have no problems with Hulk or Bearded Hulk or whatever. I think it's really when I see like Tony Stark's face or Captain America, and it's like that's so close to Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Evans, but it's not quite, that I'm like, I don't know what they were going for art style here wise, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And playing this game, it really kind of just required me kind of rewiring my thinking and being like, okay, so this is obviously more Ultimate Alliance and less Spider-Man. And when I'm playing as Thor and I'm like bashing these people in, my mind registers like, oh, God of War, and it's like, no. This doesn't have that kind of weight. Yeah, the enemies are a little bit more spongy. It's way more arcadey. So again, it requires some rewiring because, again, when you see the visuals of this game, your mind immediately starts connecting the dots of what we've experienced in the past. So it's like, oh, Spider-Man, Arkham Asylum, and stuff like that. When this one is obviously going for a very different experience, and it's an experience that's typically associated with a very cartoony kind of look with Ultimate Alliance and stuff like that. Because when you saw Ultimate Alliance, no one had any doubt of like how that was going to play. But when you see a very grounded, realistic looking game like this, you expect a little bit, I guess, more weight and realism to it. And this doesn't play like that. The Hulk platforming sections were strange. I would have pretty much expected that from any other character but him. But again, it wasn't clunky by any means. I don't think it was poorly made or optimized or anything like that. But again, that was very interesting. That was probably the weirdest reaction I had to platforming probably since like Doom, when I was like jumping all around with the Doom Slayer. And I'm like, whoa, like did not expect this. So that was strange, but generally speaking, yeah, I think they did a pretty good job with it. Ultimately, we're going to see how the story rolls out. I have no clue how that's going to play out because, again, with the beta, you get like tidbits of what's going on in that world, but you don't get like the overarching story top to bottom. I thought the Taskmaster fight was pretty solid, and I liked the way they allowed you to play with every hero. I surprisingly liked the way Captain America played a lot. I didn't think I was going to like him. I thought it was going to be way more boring, but I think he was the actual person who I felt like had the weight that I was looking for. Thor didn't, surprisingly. Hulk was fun, but it kind of reminded me of like that, I forget the name of the game, but it was like a GameCube era Hulk game, like Ultimate Destruction Devastation or something like that.
Yeah, I think Total Destruction.
Yeah, and it played a lot like that. So it's not the first time I played a Hulk game that played like that, but it didn't have the weight I was looking for. And then finally, Captain America, I think, and then they kill him, and I'm like, okay, well, thanks. No spoilers. It's in the beta, but
it happens, right at the beginning.
Yeah, so they killed him, and I'm like, all right, well, there goes that. And Kamala played really well too. I wasn't expecting to like her. So generally speaking, I would say I'm pleasantly surprised. I still have my apprehensions about this game. But I will say that I'm going to try my best to go into it with an open mind, because I think there's certainly a niche for this, and especially with the fact that they're going to be rolling out so much DLC for it, I think this can ultimately turn into something really great, and I don't want to like write it off before it gets a chance to really spread its wings. So once it's out and I put a number of hours in, that's ultimately where I can form my ultimate judgment on it. But for now, I would say that I was more impressed than I expected to be. A lot of my apprehensions turned out to be true, but also a lot of them were kind of assuaged and shown that it's not really going to be an issue. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me, but I would say top level out of 10, maybe I had like 6.57. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, which is better than, especially even off camera, we've been talking about this game and we've been worried. We don't want this game. We don't want this game to fail.
No, not at all.
It's just the way they were marketing it, the way they were talking about it. I also went back to it this weekend because I happened to leave it installed, so when it opened up for everyone, I was able to jump in. And I guess I went more clear-minded and like less like, let me see what this game can really show me. And I got further in it because, like you said, that demo is long.
Really long.
And yes, some things are just still weird. I still cannot play as Iron Man. I don't know what it is. But the Hulk, I controlled a little bit better. I really enjoyed Black Widow, except for one section which, again, it just felt a little janky. It just felt like an early build, which I know that's what this is. It's an early build. It's a demo. I don't know why they keep calling it a beta. But yeah, that loot mechanic still doesn't make sense to me too much. And some other things, and some of the voice acting, I don't know if they updated. Well, I know my icon updated, but some of the voice acting seems to be a little bit better than what I remember. It's only been, I think, 2 weeks since I played the closed beta. And just some things seemed better. Some things just, I don't know if it's just the updated files or what they did. Black Widow specifically, which I think Laura Bailey plays, just sounds more like her. It just sounds like she really, like, this is her, not like a script read. It sounds like it's the actual performance. But, I'm in the same boat where I'm slightly warmed up to it now, where I'm like, I could see myself playing this maybe, a little bit more. Maybe not the $90 deluxe edition or that whatever the collector's edition is with that weird statue. Maybe not that, but we'll see we'll see what's out there in the wild when this game launches.
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, I wouldn't say they 100% won me over, but they certainly moved me from the apprehensively waiting at a distance to, okay, I'll buy it at launch. I'll play it. I'll give it a shot.
Yep.
So and I have to say I give them a lot of credit for that, because I was pretty turned off to this game for quite a while, and I guess you could critique me on that. It's like, how you're gonna write off a game you never played before, but it's like, in this day and age, you got to be careful with your money. You got to be careful with what you finance, and if a game's looking like hot hell, I'm gonna steer clear of it until I get reports otherwise. But yeah, I getting my hands on it, I think they did a decent enough job for me to kind of jump in when it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep that on dock, and it's not too far off. So a few more weeks. So we can get into some of the stories. Got some interesting stories this week. To me anyway, I think they're a nice variety, but a small sort of update continuation. So the Halo development, the Halo Infinite development, may be in trouble. So a report has surfaced suggesting Halo Infinite's development and recent delay have been affected by outsourcing. The upcoming Halo TV show is reported to also apparently be a significant distraction, even though 343 has responded that it's not a distraction, completely separate teams with not a lot of crossover, that they're like two completely different projects with dedicated teams, leaderships that do not impact one another, is their exact quote. Also from Tharot.com, the Halo team is where he was getting a lot of his inside source, are saying that a significant portion of the game is being outsourced to a third-party contractors, and the coordination between all the different companies contribute to some of the rough plays and a lot of the issue here. And I feel mixed on this news. I'm glad that I didn't really believe that the TV show was gonna affect the game that much. I mean 343 came out and said it hasn't, and they're like, no, separate stuff. I do believe there's probably some connection. I do believe there's like the writers at least are talking to each other. I'm not saying they're abandoning one to join the other. So I'm glad they did clear that up. What did you think of this information? Because it's been a weird ride for Halo Infinite now.
Yeah, so I think it's first important to distinguish with the fact that there's kind of like two allegations here. There's the Halo TV show impacting the game development, and then there's the idea of different teams and outsourcing having problems coordinating. So those are kind of like two separate issues. The Halo TV one, 343 came out and basically said that's nonsense. I buy that. So I think that's kind of like a nothing story. The idea of coordination, we can say with 100% certainty, anyone who understands the game industry, that there is outsourcing to some capacity. That happens in pretty much every game on this scale. Newsflash to guys, a game that is the number one IP for a massive conglomeration like Microsoft is not being handled by one team in 343. Sorry if you guys thought that was the case, but it's not. If you look at games like Death Stranding, there's an ecosystem that it exists within, and main development exists in one place, but lots of other people kind of come in and play around with things and get small builds to handle different parts of the game so they can get it out in a timely manner. And especially once you get closer to launch, sometimes if you want to hit a date, you have other teams working on it. So I 100% believe the fact that this is being outsourced to some capacity. And I guess it gets into speculation territory about, like, are they having trouble working with each other? And again, when you're dealing with any story from a third-party person that's not directly involved with them, yeah, you're going to have to take it with a grain of salt. But again, judging by the scale of this game and the shape that we saw it in and the delays and the kind of dodginess they've talked about, it's like, oh, it's COVID. And you have to take, and again, this might be a very cynical look at it from my perspective, but I feel like a lot of developers might be using the COVID thing as an excuse to push their games back. Nothing wrong with that, but like I'm sure there's a couple games that kind of got caught in the crossfire that maybe we're going to launch anyways and would have been good to go. And it's not that necessarily it's COVID distracting it, but it's like, hey, we could get a couple months out of this and nobody's going to really hold it against us, so let's push it back. Screw it. And it's a good time for everybody to delay because, again, nobody's questioning it. So I feel like they chalked a lot of the Halo possible issues back in the background to like a COVID issue when it could be a great many things. So again, with a game on this scale, it doesn't surprise me that things might be having some issues. We've seen this before. Notoriously, it happened so bad with Final Fantasy VII Remake that they had to pull it back from everybody.
Yep, absolutely.
So, like, it's happened, but hey, when all was said and done, it came back home, it came out, and Final Fantasy VII Remake was awesome. So, just because things are in a little bit of turmoil right now, it's being pushed into 2021, I wouldn't say that it's, like, guaranteed going to be an absolute mess when it comes out. I think, obviously, Microsoft and the Xbox team have, like, a massive vested interest in making this game work one way or another. So, if they have to pull an all-hands-on-deck situation, they're going to have to do what they're going to have to do on this one, no doubt. The ecosystem over at the Xbox team is very different. It's very front-loaded with, like, 3 IP. It's kind of like Halo, Gears, and Forza. And if they need to pull the smaller teams, now that they have so many of them to kind of help with the development, I'm sure they're going to. It's not like PlayStation, where, like, yeah, they have, like, an engine that might be helped, and that's when kind of like Guerrilla pops in. It's like, oh, we'll help here, but it's not like every single Naughty Dog project's going to involve Guerrilla and every single team that is under the Sony ecosystem. These are larger teams that are well established that kind of do their own thing, and the smaller teams like Bent might get like a handout. You know what I mean? So I think it's one thing important to understand the Xbox ecosystem, understand what Halo means to that, and then understand that, again, like, having so many kind of hands in the pot is not necessarily abnormal for a game on this size. And I saw a lot of people commenting that's like, oh man, if you have a whole bunch of teams working on Halo, that means 343 might not be cutting it. And I'm like, I promise you guys, this is not the first Halo to be worked on by external teams. And it doesn't necessarily mean that 343 is in over their heads for this.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's just not how games are made. Like, there are sometimes it's simple things where one team is like, they outsource, let's say, just for example, the menus. Like, no, this team is controlling the menus, they controls the pause menu, whatever, sounds. There's like different chunks, that, you can have like, if you're just a person who works on graphics and backdrops and stuff like that, you're obviously not going to be inputting on how the menu should work and things like that. So that was a small thing, which, it's obviously true. Games do get chopped up and outsourced and stuff like that. I think just people ignore that. It's usually not talked about so much. So when this game was, especially in the state that it was shown, people just wanted to really devour it and really hate it. And the Sony, fanboys obviously are just running with this. Like, oh, Naughty Dog makes their own games. They don't have to outsource it. Listen, they do. Like you were saying, the Sony ecosystem is way different. Again, it's just not talked about. It's not brought up to the front lines because there's no need to bring that up. Like, this is how games are made, not just one giant office building and everything gets done there. It's just not how it works. So, I mean, again, like we were saying before, the delay can only really help this game. The game needs help. I hate to be so negative on it. I do want this game to be successful. I think, luckily, a lot of this turmoil and a lot of this controversy has been kind of patted down and like kind of forgotten already. People were just really sparked up with it and so upset still about the delay. Some of the marketing doesn't make sense to me because I feel like this wasn't a delay that was just last second known. You have to assume some of the higher ups knew that this was coming. So why even show the game in its state? You gotta remember, we didn't see this game from, I think, the Game Awards, December, something like that, or even maybe earlier, until a few weeks ago. So I always had the same impression that many people did in like January. We were like, oh, this game's not coming out 2020. I just didn't believe it because we hadn't seen it. And not that we need to be flooded by stuff, but it's like you guys have not talked about it. They always do some sort of online beta semi close to launch to really test the servers and stuff like that. So it's like we knew there was issues even prior to COVID. So I just don't see how so many people were surprised. I'm surprised again that they were showing and they kept reiterating that it's the launch game for the Xbox, for Series X. It's the launch game. It's gonna be there. Really trying to recreate what the launch of the original Xbox was. So I'm surprised who knew and who didn't know, because some people were really pushing that, and so it's weird to see just that kind of aspect. Again, like you were saying perfectly, that the Xbox ecosystem is so different. The marketing they do is different. The teams that work with the different subjects are just different. And that's when you end up with sort of a messy situation like this.
Yeah, and again, I want to say that if anybody is apprehensive about Halo Infinite, I am too. It's not that I'm like defending them and be like, hey, you guys have nothing to worry about. But I think it's important to understand that, like, if there's one game that Microsoft's gonna lift heaven to make sure is all right when it comes out, it's gonna be Halo. So that's the only, I guess, reason why I'm not super worried about it, is because I just don't feel like in the Phil Spencer era he's gonna let this game flop. I just don't see it. Again, and with the whole narrative of like Xbox having an exclusives issue, and on top of that, them trying to launch a new console and trying to get some traction there, I just don't think they allow their biggest game to not come out in the state it needs to come out to. So I think that's just what makes me feel a little bit better, is just it in the context of what Halo means to the Xbox ecosystem and how much time it's been since the last one and how much they understand the demands of the fan. It's not like they don't understand how much people were like, 5 was cool and all, but get this one right. They understand that. And so I understand why they probably have a million people working on it, and they're willing to delay it. I would say, hey, temper your expectations. It could get delayed again. I wouldn't be surprised, because I think they really want to get this right when it's out. So don't be surprised if it comes like springtime 2021 and they try to push it off to summer or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get an Xbox One version.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I wouldn't be surprised about that either. I think that might be for the better. If they don't have to play to the lowest common denominator and they're willing to take advantage of the highest, processing power as possible, that might be better for the game.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, and if people are, I know people are going to be worried and stuff like that, but I feel like, again, if cutting off being like, listen, we just can't get the Xbox One version running, and we really want this game to be great, like, you have to start making sacrifices.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of why the traditional upgrade to next-gen model exists in the first place. That's why kind of Sony doubles down with the fact that it's like, no, this is a PS5 experience. And you could be like, oh, they're just trying to force you to buy a new thing and stuff like that. But there are technical limitations for last gen. I mean, that machine came out in 2013. Like, it can only do so much. Mm-hmm. And so if in 2020 you're trying to make this, again, and they've said this multiple times, that Halo Infinite is the most ambitious Halo to date. I mean, then how are you supposed to make that work on 7-8-year-old hardware? I mean, you're naturally going to have that issue. So I wish them the best, but again, I know they're fighting an uphill battle over there, and I have faith in them. But everybody, it's well documented, the kind of slippery position Xbox is in going into this next generation. Mm-hmm. All right, so I guess we can move on to the next story. And this, again, is another story I say take with a grain of salt. This is kind of like rumored, floating around, but I think it's worth mentioning. So a game listing on Amazon for a Nintendo Switch port for the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword has been found. It was found by Wario64 on Twitter, which I highly suggest you go follow. Lots of great deals over there. Me and Steve alike have both gotten a crap ton of stuff through his deals that he's posted.
Super cheap.
Yeah, so he's amazing. So IGN deals, Wario64, all these guys, go follow him. And he found this listing briefly on Amazon UK. Now, we see weird placeholder games go up online all the time, especially on like Walmart and like Amazon France and Amazon Brazil, and like all these places have things. Sometimes they're real, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're kind of background people at these corporations being like, we think this might happen, so they kind of prep the digital ecosystem for a thing, and then it turns out to not be true. That's happened many times, especially through Walmart. So that's why I say take this with a grain of salt, because yes, this has gone on, but this doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% true. Once they start leaking images and we start seeing like promo stuff for that, hey, maybe internal documents like, hey, we got another first party Wii port that's coming out, then you could fill in the blanks and be like, all right, this is happening. But Steve, Skyward Sword, first off, have you played it, and what do you think of this?
So I have played it. I have played it on the Wii, obviously, because that's the only place you can play it. Now, this is the only Zelda game I have not beaten.
Okay.
I have seen this ending. I did watch the ending because I was like, I can't get through it, though. Me and the Wii did not click for specific games. I didn't want to play Zelda with the way it was, the way the buttons were controlled to the Wii remote and the waggle. It was just, I was over that kind of mechanics, because this was one of the last Wii titles that came out, if I remember.
Yeah, it was like 2011. It was pretty late.
Yeah, because I remember this came out, and but I was too busy playing like Uncharted 3 or something like that.
Mass Effect 3 was around at that time, so it's crazy to think that it's a pretty contemporary game.
Yeah, it is, and I know that's the more general consensus. I know a lot of people have issues with like tutorials in that game and how super like baby mode they made a lot of it. Though I hate using that term technically, but I want to replay this game, and I would love for this to be true. This is not the first time we've heard this sort of rumor, and I think when like the Switch first launched, people were kind of discussing, because this is the only one now to not get a port/remakes. I know they did the 64 games. I know then we got the remasters of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on Wii U, which, I mean, come on, give me those on Switch already.
Oh, no doubt.
So I'm pretty confident this will come. I think they just needed a little bit more time to tweak it. I hope they reworked some of the stuff, because for all intents and purposes, like the Switch could replicate the way they did some of the stuff on the Wii remotes with the sensors and stuff like that, but I hope not, because I play my Switch 95% of the time handheld, so it'd be weird, to do that. I mean, I believe it. I want it. It would be kind of nice to have, obviously we're not getting Breath of the Wild 2 this year. I don't know why people still think that. So this would be a nice, like, Zelda placeholder. We got, not too long ago, we got Link's Awakening. Then we get another port, that was remake. Then we get more of a port remake of Skyward. And then in a year or two, we get Breath of the Wild 2, which would make sense to me. I don't trust these things that much anymore when, Amazon's constantly putting random things up. We've seen them put things up and it's never come to fruition. Again, like you said, some people just jump the gun. They think they heard something down the pipeline and nothing ever comes from it. So I'm hoping, though.
Yeah, and my excitement about this possible port is entirely dependent on what the nature of the port is. I like Skyward Sword, generally speaking, as like I love the story. I do quite enjoy the art style of it. I enjoy the world. I enjoy the kind of like aerial nature of it. It's a pretty cool game. The only hang up I've ever had was the gameplay. I just don't like motion controls at all. And this is the most motion control-y game of like all time. Like, I just can't stand it. It's just not my gameplay style. The thing is, that gameplay style can be semi-replicated on the Switch. And a lot of people I've seen say that's like, if this port happens, it has to pretty much introduce traditional controls, and they have to completely revamp the game. I would say not necessarily, and I brought this up on the news episode yesterday. World of Goo, when that first came out on the Switch port, early on the Switch's life cycle, it was a Wii game. And what they did was they have you point the Joy-Con to what you perceive to be the middle of the screen. It calibrates that location in real time in relation to the controller, and it replicates pretty much motion controls without a sensor. So exactly. It can be done. If they really wanted to, they can be done. And that kind of opens it up to pretty much if they wanted to do Galaxy. There's a number of games they could play around with. So they could tweak it minorly that way. And if they did it that way, then I'm probably going to skip this one too. But if they do introduce traditional controls and they could be played just like every other Zelda game, I'm in there. Because I feel like this game is criminally underrated because of the gameplay kind of limitations of it. And if you take that away and you could just experience the story as is, that's perfection. So I'm hoping this is real. For many reasons, for me to possibly be able to jump into it and see it front to back, but also for a number of the people who have never experienced it, and for all the people who love Zelda but don't have a Wii, so they don't want to go out of their way to play an old game. So it's been long enough for it to come. I hope it comes. And also, it's important to note that Zelda, for the most part, has been kind of annualized. And I know a lot of people don't think about it that way, but if you look back on previous years, they pretty much had a Zelda-related property pretty much every year for quite a while now. And if you count, and yes, some years it's major games. Sometimes it's like Triforce Heroes and Hyrule Warriors and the Link's Awakening remake. Like, there's smaller things in between, stapled in between the major games. But in many ways, if you look, it's been damn near close to being annualized. So this year, as long as they're not counting the Cadence of Hyrule DLC, which I don't know if that counts, maybe, but maybe not, because it's not officially Nintendo, so I don't know. Then this might be a thing. Might be. Again, I might be being optimistic and reading into it too much, but that's the nature of being a Nintendo fan. That's what we do. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll keep our eyes out, and I just don't think Nintendo's those people to. I mean, I'm half and half for it. Like, yeah, they'll definitely bring this forward. At the same time, we have not gotten Galaxies anywhere else, and it's just a mess with Nintendo and them not giving us what we exactly want. So it's weird.
Close but no cigar.
Exactly. All right, so we have a follow-up to a story we discussed about 505 and Remedy's Control fiasco. And they tried to clear up their statement, and it made no sense.
Yeah.
So 505 Games has released a blog post that explains why the base game of Control, the launch version, won't get free next-gen upgrades. And they said they understood how it wasn't going to be, likely known, and they knew a lot of people would be upset. But, so their exact quote is, "To bring Control to the next generation consoles in any form, we had to make some difficult decisions, and those came in the form of creating the simplified Control Ultimate Edition product plan we have today. That we took a while responding does not mean we have not been listening. We are sorry we couldn't meet everyone's expectations, and we hope you will continue to support Control. The publisher said it spent several months exploring all of the possible launch options for the Control Ultimate Edition and that no decision made was taken lightly. It said that it was difficult to upgrade its current user base to next gen with full parity across platforms with our year-old game. Sounds like a bunch of nonsense. Again, I'm not a developer. I don't know what it is to work on these games behind the scenes, but I've been really seeing what other people who are developers, programmers, all these different things, be like, that makes no sense, because we didn't put it in this quote, but they did mention like, oh, well, with backwards compatibility, you can play your launch version of Control. I'm like, wait. So hold on. I bought your game at launch. Let's say I bought your game at launch. Let's say I bought the digital deluxe edition, $80 at launch, and because I supported you on day one, a year later when the new consoles come out, I have to play the inferior version. Because that's from my understanding, they're saying, but between the upgrades and I guess that means they did do some tweaking maybe to the base game. Obviously added the DLC. They're like, well, those things are going to be locked to the Ultimate Edition. Which still doesn't even make sense, even if you take next gen out of the equation. You're telling me it's people who waited a year to get your game on a discount. So for I think the Ultimate Edition is gonna be like $40. They get to play the more polished version of the game. That makes no sense to me. It doesn't make any sense. This is one of the most consumer things I've ever seen. For that, you just make I think it would have been easier to just do Control Ultimate Edition and make it a full next-gen game, and that's it.
Yeah, and like a Last of Us remastered type situation.
Yeah, that's what I think they should have done, because now it doesn't, because like I said, removing the next-gen stuff out of the position, I don't get the upgrades. But someone who got the Ultimate Edition and plays it on the PS4 Pro is going to get a nicer version of the game. It just makes no sense. What did you think of this? Because I just stared. I read the article and I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. What's the issue here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a peculiar statement because of, again, so one thing, they did confirm what I brought up last week, which was the idea that you could just play your regular Control version on next gen. So what they're explaining, that this is more of a thing that you're just not going to get the upgrades. Okay, fair enough. The last part of their statement is what is very interesting to me, which is the current user base. It was difficult to upgrade its current user base to next gen with full parity across platforms with our year-old game. So basically, that takes the whole issue not from a financial reality, like, hey, we need to be able to make the money where we need to make it issue, and more of technical limitations. The whole idea of full parity across platforms, which means, are they saying that they're having trouble making the original version of Control jive and speak well with the newer version? Is that what they're saying? Like they're having problems syncing it up when it's being played on next gen? That is peculiar. I can't speak to that. Again, I'm not a developer, but that is kind of like a wrench thrown into it that I don't really understand what this is all about. And again, you brought up an excellent point. This so easily could have been avoided if they just treated this Ultimate Edition like every other game does when it's cross-gen, which is just release a new version for the new generation. That's all.
Yeah, and that's it.
And if you have the old version and it's backwards compatible in the new console, treat it the same. We've seen Xbox do this. Release a patch the old game. If people would like to play the new version, they buy the new version. It's a simple thing. Like, I don't understand this. You can upgrade if you have this version that's also on the PS4, but it's also going to be playable on the PS5. But if you want to play the old version on the PS5, you can, but you can't have access to the thing, even though they're both on PS4 games. Like, what are you talking about?
Do you see how ridiculous?
What are you talking about? They're both PS4 games. What are you what are we doing here?
That's where I'm super confused.
Needlessly complicated.
EA figured this out. This is an EA move. This is an Activision move where it's like, no, well, you got to get the new version. And they're the ones being like, nah, if you get it on PS4, you'll pop it into your PS5, you'll be good.
And I'm like, is this... I can't think... This can't be Remedy. This has to be a 505 thing. Like, I don't understand. Is this like a publisher trying to make money thing? Or is this a Remedy, we can't make it work thing? Like, I don't understand. And I feel like this issue at multiple junctions with multiple different solutions could have been fixed before they got to this point. Yep. And then on top of that, they'll be like, all right, you guys, we heard you guys. We understand that you're not too happy about it. This is what we're going to do. We'll patch you guys in. Again, Control didn't sell astronomically. So this is not a massive burden to bring these people over. You're like, oh, we're having trouble. We don't want to bring in all these people who bought a game a whole year ago. And it's like, that wasn't a lot of people. It wasn't a lot of people,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to be mean to this game, but again, it didn't. It underperformed. So you would think if you want to have your user base as big as possible going into next gen, bring as many people over as possible. And I just don't understand locking this upgrade away behind a new version of the game when the new version of the game, for all intents and purposes, is still the current gen version. The Ultimate Edition is still a PS4 game, just like the regular Control version is. These are both PS4 games. You're just saying one version of the PS4 game does this on next gen, and one version of this PS4 game does this on next gen. And just I don't understand why go about this. And I understand you can make the value proposition. It's like, hey, look at all these upgrades we're offering. I'm not talking about the like how good of an upgrade it is. I'm not speaking to that. What I'm saying is, if you would like to communicate things in an effective manner to your player base, make things as simple as possible. What is the simplest way to go about things? Just do what others have done already. I mean, look at Rockstar. They've done this before. Yeah. This has been done before. This is not as uncharted waters as they're trying to act like it is. They're trying to act like we have no way. We don't understand how to make this. This is weird territory. We don't know what to do. And it's like, come on, bro. Like, look at Red Dead. This has been done before. Like, come on. And so, again, I don't ever want to be the person to look like I'm picking on a small team, because I understand there are personnel that can lead to technical limitations with having a smaller team. I understand that. But at the same time, you guys in many ways inherited an issue needlessly. This could have been such a nothing story where it's like some people get mad on Twitter and it's like, okay, sorry, look, this is how we're going to go about it. Simple problem. Regular next-gen upgrade. There's a PS5 version of Control. There's a PS4 version of Control. You choose which one you want. And if you have the PS4 version, come over. It's fine. It's backwards compatible. And if you want the PS5 version, cool. You get all these awesome upgrades and stuff like that, just like every other next-gen, cross-gen game has ever done before. But they want to play weird and make it this complicated issue. And now, congratulations, you shot yourself in the foot with a game that can possibly flop twice now. Congratulations.
Yeah. That's the terrible aspect, and the worrying someone is this could come out and not sell again. For people just protesting, be like, nah, don't get it because of this, and people will listen and be like, I'll just go get it used on this, or I'll go buy it on, or get it cheap on a Steam sale. It's super cheap on Steam constantly. Actually on Epic Games, so I think they have an exclusive over there, whatever it was. It's just horrible marketing. Now people are going to be very worried for whatever Remedy has. Next time they want to purchase a Remedy game, it's like, do I wait to get the better version? Are you going to lock it behind? Because you're not even locking it behind a system. You're locking it behind another $40 is the way I look at it. You're not locking it, you want to get, like I said, you want to get listen, we were able to do we were able to polish it really nice, but only if you get the Ultimate Edition on PS5, if that was locked. No, you're saying it's locked behind $40, and it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and it's like, I feel bad for, like, Remedy, because in many ways, like, they made an incredible game. Like, Control's a really awesome game.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, okay, it went under the radar the first time, and that sucks. Oh, an Ultimate Edition, go into next gen. You know how next gen is with new games. Like, games always sell like crazy on next gen because people are just looking for new games to play on their new machine. So, this is a new lease on life, a new opportunity, and now, boom, hit with such bad press in such an avoidable way. It's just, I feel bad for a lot of the developers who pour their heart and soul into these awesome games and then get burned by stupid pricing, marketing nonsense. Mm-hmm. And we've seen this happen time and time and time again, where I have no choice but to put this on the publisher, because I cannot see Remedy making this call.
No, yeah, I think it's pretty.
This has to be a 505 thing.
It's a pretty, and you guessed it. I think last week when we discussed it, you're like, it's got to be 505, because it's almost a publishing release issue. It's not the game problem, because I mean they, for all intents and purposes, they released the game not broken, but it was not to the full extent where it needed to be. Even on an Xbox, One X, and even on PC, there were some issues with it. And again, like I always say, my PS4 version now still has issues. I was able to get through it, obviously, but there's still issues. So it's definitely a 505 thing, which is just wild to think that just why is this an issue with free?
And there's no online modes, right? There's no like online multiplayer, capture the flag type modes, right?
Completely single player game.
So what are they talking about parity? What do you mean parody for a single player game? That's what I don't understand.
Unless I really missed something. Hold
Yeah.
on, my copy's right near me. I can tell you right now.
Yeah, unless I'm completely missing something and there's like a team deathmatch mode and they're having trouble making that sync up with an old version and a new version like that, okay, maybe it's a different conversation. But from what I understand, this is a single player experience. You're playing by your whole self alone the whole time.
Yeah, one player.
Yeah, so I don't know. Again, I don't want to beat a dead horse at this point, but like I don't know what they're talking about, and hopefully they follow up with some more stories. Because again, I don't have the original version of Control. I played it, but I don't have the original version. So the Ultimate Edition was 100% something I was probably going to buy for next gen. And now that they're playing these weird games, I'm like, what is this all about? Like, I don't understand. Could I just save $20 and buy the regular version and play it backwards compatible? And they haven't explained all this. And
that's what I'm saying. The DLC is not exclusive to the Ultimate Edition, and everyone's super excited about the Alan Wake DLC coming out, which has been teased forever.
Yeah.
And that's not locked, so it's like, why? Why would I? I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Yeah. Again, like the Apple versus Epic thing. This is, I'm sure, not going to be the story we hear the last of, and I'm sure they're not the first dev that are probably even going to go through this, because we're going to see the same nonsense for pretty much every other dev that wants to make as much money as possible with these next gen upgrades. So, buckle in, because there's a whole bunch more. Trust me.
Yep.
When Activision starts finding a way, oh no, they find a way. So, speaking of Activision,
yeah, good segue.
Black Ops Cold War. Confirmed. So the next Call of Duty game is officially called Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. They posted a trailer that shows real footage from the Cold War era of history, all the while using voiceover from KGB defector Yuri Bezmenov as he explains the tools of fighting a Cold War. So this is a Treyarch and Raven developed game, and it's cool because coming off of the Modern Warfare game, that was in many ways a soft / continuity reboot of the Modern Warfare series. With them going back to the Cold War, in many ways, this is a soft reboot of Black Ops that has gone super futuristic in previous entries.
Yep.
So this game really excites me as one of the weirdos who only plays the campaign, admittedly. We're like in the super small minority of people who do.
Yeah.
But how excited are you about this game?
Yeah, so I'm a huge Treyarch fan. My first Call of Duty, like real Call of Duty, was World at War.
Okay.
So it's always been Treyarch for me, who I prefer their games. Raven is, really underused by Activision. They're usually stuck to making maps and stuff and DLC for Call of Duty games. So I wonder how much more development they were able to get. Like how much of their hands were they really able to do. I'm excited. Again, I'm a huge Treyarch fan. I'm also in the minority where multiplayer, I will probably not touch. Sometimes I get surprised, and I do, but I probably won't touch. I'm all zombies and single player.
Oh, yeah.
And zombies have gotten way, way too complicated, especially in Black Ops 3. I was, super confused. Black Ops 4, they made it a little bit more, normal. I also don't think the other companies they make zombie modes in some of the other ones, and that doesn't make sense. So I really prefer Treyarch's version and stuff like that. I'm excited because I love this time era. The Cold War is always something I think, like, Call of Duty's always touched base and stuff like that, but I think a game based in that era will be really well done. And obviously, game-wise, it's probably going to be fantastic. Their single-player games are usually not terrible. Obviously, Black Ops 4 didn't have one, so there is some worry I have because, one, this wasn't Treyarch's year to go up. They doubled them up, yeah. They doubled them up, and I think that's why they had to bring Raven on board, so they're almost a year early.
Because this Sledgehammer's turn, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, their game was apparently really in bad condition, so some of that stuff was apparently given to Raven, and Raven's folding it in. I don't understand how that works. Obviously, Activision is a huge company. Sometimes they know what they're doing. So, but you got to remember, Treyarch couldn't get the single player component to Black Ops 4 ready in time, and that's why it's cut out. That's why the cutscenes are in there, but the game, there is no single player mode in Black Ops. Well, there's no campaign mode. I'm sorry, in Black Ops 4. So I'm worried that if they couldn't do that game proper, and I know they had to do a lot of stuff to get their first battle royale mode Blackout in Black Ops 4. I'm just wondering what else does that mean for this game, because now they didn't have to worry about the battle royale mode because this is going to be somehow compatible with Warzone. I'm more worried about the single player mechanic and the campaign because that's really where I live and breathe in these games. Yeah. Obviously, that first week, and for both of us actually, is just all campaign. So, but what does that look like? Because you guys couldn't get the campaign together last time with your usual 3-year cycle, which is still super cramped time to produce a game of this quality. Now you were pushed further. Again, I don't know how early that delay was and all that kind of, Sledgehammer was pulled off their title. What do we see that? I'm curious. Do we see like, oh, this game needed another 6 months, year polish? And I don't think we'll see that. I think they know. I do think it's very odd that we're waiting this long for the last, for the last decade. They always announce the new Call of Duty in May. So the fact that you gotta assume 2 months from launch. Call of Duty usually launch October. Launches, yeah, so it's wild to think that they're just showing. I mean, we haven't seen gameplay. We saw, like you said, we saw the KGB trailer, and we've seen, I think, a poster. I think we saw the poster with the guy with all the propaganda taped to him or something like that. And that's it. So this Call of Duty's never been this quiet. So they could either come out swinging, showing us a lot of cool things, or the game could be, Call of Duty's been on a plateau almost, and some declines. I'd hate that Treyarch be the one to be like, oh, you guys are the ones ruining Call of Duty, when they really, between them and the Modern Warfare series was really helping Call of Duty. They're not the guys who made Ghost. Ghost was, I think, overall hated and really disliked. So I'm worried, but I am excited.
Yeah, the way I kind of look at it, to kind of wrap this up, is every year that we get a dedicated campaign to Call of Duty, I feel like thankful for, because every year I feel like this might be the last one. Because again, like the returns, we're a small minority of people who even play this. We're obviously big enough to justify. They get all the metrics and analytics. They know exactly how many people are playing this, so they're obviously seeing enough to keep it around. But I always ask myself, like, how long? When is that going to fall apart? Like, eventually, I'm sure it's going to go by the wayside, because with Warzone getting more and more popular, with zombies being the thing it is, with the traditional multiplayer suite always being the kind of bread and butter of Call of Duty experiences, it's getting pushed lower and lower and lower down the totem pole. And I felt like the moment Warzone popped off, okay, well, if they can make money in 3 other ways through a Call of Duty game before they even deal with the campaign, which is arguably a pretty expensive venture for them to make. Making a campaign is not cheap. The voice acting and all that, it's not a cheap thing. So I feel like every year I'm kind of on borrowed time with this, where it's like, well, one of these years it's going to fall under. So if Black Ops Cold War has a campaign, I'm happy, and hopefully it's not the last one, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I felt the same way when Black Ops 4 came out and they're like, no campaign. I was like, well,
that's
there it goes. I was like, well, there it is. But you never know.
And who knows? Maybe they could make one of their 3 or 4 teams be the campaign guys. So maybe every time Infinity Ward drops a game, that one's gonna have a campaign. But maybe Treyarch is just going to focus more on the zombie side, and they'll have their game. And maybe when Sledgehammer drops, they're going to be the ones that maybe put a whole bunch of work and push the Warzone stuff. I'm not, and again, I might be misinformed. I'm just saying as a general example of how we can get a campaign every 3 years or so when Infinity Ward or Sledgehammer or whatever drops, and then the other games just focus on the multiplayer suite, and maybe that's how it exists going forward. So not every single game, every single year needs a campaign, so it doesn't absorb resources from a game developers that are on otherwise a really tight schedule.
All right. So the new Xbox UI has been unveiled. So Microsoft showcased the new Xbox Series X dashboard in a recent video, showing how the dashboard streamlines everything to allow gamers to get into their games quicker than ever. It's faster, uses 40% less memory, and simplifies sharing game clips and screenshots by using your phone. So I saw this. I for some reason thought it was a mock-up until I saw more people discussing it. And for those who haven't seen it, it's just, you already know Windows, so it's it's a little bit more cleaned up.
Yeah.
Besides that, it looks the same. My more thing is how it runs. I don't care what it looks like because it looks fine on the Xbox One. It's a little busy, but it runs like hot trash on my Xbox. So, were you excited to see this? I mean, it kind of just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, the aesthetic look of it is it's kind of all in line with people who are already in the Windows ecosystem. This is not abnormal. It's streamlined a bit more. They kind of focused basically on the most used things, which is your games, your media stuff, and like maybe one other thing in like Game Pass or whatever. Oh, the store. And they kind of built everything around these like 3 little pillars, which makes all the sense in the world. You don't need a million different things on your screen. But again, you have to keep in mind that the Xbox One ecosystem as it exists right now in a UI perspective, it's malleable. You can adjust it to what you want. So it doesn't have to be as busy as it might look. At times you can uninstall things, you can move things around. Unfortunately, you have to do all that work. It would be cool if they kept it clean off rip. But yeah, the speed thing is the most important part of it. The fact that it's faster, the 40% less memory, the game clips and screenshots by using your phone. So that's not, there's different aspects of it that are appealing, but the speed is the important thing. And I mentioned on the news, speed at launch is great and it's important, but my concerns is it going to run this fast by the end of the gen? Because guess what? The PS4 was pretty fast when it launched too, and look at frickin' now. Try to go onto your PS4 and press up. Just press up. Look what happens. It like falls apart.
For me to get into my trophies, I mean, I constantly talk about trophies, and even on the PS4, to get to my trophies, sometimes it just won't load.
Yeah, and like the Xbox is not much better, and especially like the Xbox boot up, that one takes forever. So the fact that they're saying like, hey, you can get into your games way faster, that's a great thing. That excites me. But again, I want to just emphasize the fact that I just hope it stays that way, because for example, they're like, oh, no load times in games. Which is awesome when you're running launch, Xbox Series X games and Xbox One games. In 2026, when games are running 4K 120 frames per second from a first party, is that going to have no load times? You know what I mean? Like, things change as technology increases. So
I always had that issue with when they showed Spider-Man PS4 running on the PS5. I was like, that's great for a PS4 game. I was like, what's the PS5 game look like?
Yeah, like, is GTA 6 going to have no load times? I'm assuming not.
Exactly.
So, I'm happy about it. It looks good to me. I was a little apprehensive when they first talked about getting the phone thing out, because I immediately had flashbacks to Nintendo. I was like, don't do it. No, stop with the phone. Not again. I started shaking for a second. But then I was like, oh, sharing screenshots? Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Which it makes sense because getting screens, I do a lot of screenshots on like my PlayStation and stuff, and I try to do it on my Xbox, and it's such a hassle to get into like the capture gallery on Xbox to get my screenshots, to get loaded up, and it needs a faster way to just snap to it. So that made me excited.
Yeah, this is a smart way to use the phone, as opposed to like, hey, if you want to talk to your friends, take your phone out. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely not.
But if you're talking about like taking stuff from a console onto social media, and you can make the phone and the console speak to each other really like seamlessly, and then go straight onto your social media apps with the footage, that makes all the sense in the world. Yes, I'm with that. So if they can make that work, I think that's going to be awesome. That's going to be probably really great for streamers. That's going to be really great for people who have social media accounts where they share different things, especially with like photo sharing and the really beautiful games and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like how I think that would have been really awesome to do, like with Ghost of Tsushima, for example. If I could have just had that on my phone really quick and share like my different wallpapers on Twitter like immediately like that, I think that would have been really dope without having to pause the game itself.
Yeah, that's true, because even sometimes for me to get a copy of some of the things I wanted, I'd have to first sign into my Twitter on my PlayStation, upload it, then go on my phone, go to my Twitter, save the photo, then delete the tweet if I didn't want the tweet. And it's like, this should just be I mean, we have a PlayStation app and an Xbox app. This should be just an update where I can just access my my footage.
Yeah, and the only thing I was a little confused about is I felt like at one point they were explaining how the Series X, in terms of a UI perspective, was not going to be a massive overhaul of the ecosystem. Like, for the most part, everything's, going to be seamless. And it would be power differential. But then they kind of being like, oh, no, there's a Series X dashboard that's different. So they kind of switched course on that, but I think they switched course for the better ultimately. I like what it looks like. It looks pretty much the same. It looks a little bit more customizable and cleaner.
Yeah, it just looked like what I thought it would. I was like, if it doesn't look the same, I'm like, it should just be a little bit cleaner.
But again, I haven't really been a fan of many of the UIs. Pretty much, as soon as game consoles became more multimedia-esque and more things were being offered, I stopped kind of liking any of the UIs. Like, I thought the cross-media bar on the PS3 was all right. I know some people don't like it. Some people like it. I had no complaints about it. I didn't really like the 360 screen. The PS4 is pretty good. I like the folder mechanism. That's not too bad. The Xbox One right now, again, it's a little clunky and it's a little all over the place. And you got my game next to Crunchyroll, next to this weird advertisement. Like, it looks weird at
Should have
times.
seen it at launch. It was wild.
And oh yeah, I'm sure. And then on top of that, the Switch is clean, but that's almost like too bare bones and too not customizable. So it's like a weird generation where I feel like some people are offering too much, some people are offering not enough. So they're trying to find that healthy medium. And I'm hopefully once we see like the PS5 or something like that, they can find something, because again, they play off each other. So if the PS5 drops with a really clean UI that people really like, maybe something closer to like Steam, for example. And I don't know if you've ever done like Steam big picture mode, but
Yeah.
I actually kind of like that UI.
Yep.
And so maybe if they do something closer to that, and then Xbox see that and it's like, oh, okay, and they do their own spin on that, I feel like they can all kind of feed off each other and improve in that one. So I have high hopes, but as long as it runs, that's my ultimate thing. If it looks like crap, okay, it looks like crap. If it does what it got to do, it does what it got to do. I just want it to be fast. I'm tired of this whole thing where I go and I press up and there's a weird delay on it, and I'm pressing the home button and that's like jittering and it closes me out of my game. I'm like, what is all this?
Yep.
All right, so I guess we can move on to the next story. We're getting a lot of DC news for you guys because obviously DC fandom's going on, and we're big DC fans, especially me, and this is our show, so we'll do what we want. But WB Games Montreal has revealed its next game, and it's called Batman Knights, and it's set for a 2021 release. Now, I included a little spoiler tag right here. For you guys who do not want any information about Gotham Knights, you're going to have to click away here. But here we go with some plot stuff that we got. Again, this is early plot stuff in the game. They're not dropping any crazy things, but this is where the world you're being set up in. You can play as Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, or Tim Drake as Robin in a Gotham after Batman has died, which is really, really interesting. They revealed 7 minutes of gameplay, playing a lot as Batgirl specifically. And the game looks fantastic to me. Also, there's a trailer for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League that dropped. We'll talk about that right after we finish Gotham Knights. But besides some of the clunkiness, because again, it's early in development, so we're not gonna harp on that. The ability to play as people part of like the little squad here, I think is really awesome. What do you think about this? I know you're a big Red Hood fan.
Yeah, I am. I love this. So, for a while, I believe it's been almost over a year, that WB Montreal has been teasing this, especially the whole Court of Owls, which we finally get a small glimpse of in the trailer, which I mean, you know how I feel about the Court of Owls. I love this. So when I saw that, I got just like super kid inside of me. But yeah, it's awesome. I'm a huge fan of most of these characters, Nightwing, Batgirl, Red Hood, and Tim Drake as Robin. I was like, yo, those are like my 4 favorite people, and now I get a whole game about them. I was confused because they're like, obviously, right at the beginning of the trailer, it's the death of Batman. I was trying to understand, is it's going off the ending of Batman Arkham Knight, correct?
From what I understand,
because it's Batman's death, and that's where that game ends.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's direct continuity.
It's that universe. I mean, they called it Batman Arkham Knights, right? What they called it?
Is it Gotham Knights? Is it Batman Knights?
Gotham Knights. Sorry, Gotham Knights. So I was confused for a second. But yeah, I'm excited.
Batman,
to do this,
Gotham Knights.
Batman, Gotham Knights. So again, I'm glad it's there. I'm glad Montreal gets to get back into this universe, because again, they always get short-staffed with Origins.
Yes.
Origins was the prequel. So I'm glad they're back in there. I'm glad they're doing the continuation in this world that Batman does. He's dead, quote unquote. It was very ambiguous at the end of Arkham Knight, so we don't know how this exactly rolls. Again, that's all probably story beats and stuff like that, and we'll see how it connects later. We'll continue talking about the Suicide Squad. But I'm excited. A lot of the gameplay mechanics look the same, even though it was, again, they the smartest thing they did is they released a small little statement before the trailer or gameplay that that not necessarily that the game was in like super early, but they're like, the footage you're seeing right now is from an early build. Yeah. So this may have been from like a year ago. Obviously, this game I think was supposed to be announced way earlier, at probably E3. Even
COVID threw it all out.
You know, COVID obviously threw this off. There's no way somebody wanted to tease a photo every couple months leading up to this game. But I'm excited for this, and I mean, I know you love this world as much as I do. So what are you thinking? What was your gut reaction when you saw the?
I mean, I was freaking out. Yeah. And it's a weird thing. It's like, okay, this looks amazing. Yes, this is what I want. At the same time, you know, DC fanboy kicks in, and you have a little meltdown. It's like, wait a minute, where's Batwoman? Where's Batwing? Like, and I'm like, all right, settle down, DC fanboy. Like, they're giving you 4. That's pretty good. But because then you go down the thing and it's like, where's Azrael? Where's Damian? Like, yeah, I mean, you could have a cast of 116 people if you want, but at the same time, this is a good choice. I love the way it plays. It's quick, it's kinetic. I'm excited to see the gameplay styles, like how much they differentiate, because again, at the same time, these are very distinct characters. They fight very differently, but at the same time, it's the Bat family within the Arkham universe. So I feel like it's going to be tricky for them to differentiate between all their battle styles. You know what I mean? Batgirl is going to naturally be marginally faster. Nightwing has his staffs to use. Red Hood can utilize like guns for a way. And Tim Drake has, God knows, a different, you know, technology. You could play around with him a lot. He's essentially Donatello of the Bat family stuff. There's a lot of different directions they could take this that I'm really excited about. And I'm excited the fact that they seem very open to playing around with very strange storylines that are not conventional necessarily. Mm-hmm. So yeah, starting out a Bat family game with like, hey, Batman's dead. He's out of the picture, at least for now. I think that's a really awesome, bold thing, because it puts a different level of investment into these characters being like, because if he was still around, you'd be like, okay, these guys are cool, but like, what's Batman doing?
Yeah, whereas, you know,
you take him out of the picture, it's like, okay, this is who you're settled with. So you're just as invested into Batgirl and Nightwing's success and Red Hood and what is Tim Drake doing. And I think that's a really awesome. And again, choosing Tim Drake having there is awesome. So it's going to familiarize people with the idea of like Red Robin and stuff like that. And yeah, so I'm really, really excited about it. And I can gush for DC properties for a million years, not to mention exactly what we're about to talk about. But yeah, I like what I saw. Again, yeah, it jitters here and there, but it's an early build, so who knows. Ultimately, when this game comes out, I'm sure it's going to be super polished. The city looked really good. Only issue is obviously the same critique a lot of people had, where every game that subsequently came out from Arkham Asylum, a lot of people lost a little bit of that magic that Arkham Asylum had. Mm-hmm. That having that tight world that was finely tuned and all the collectibles and the little puzzles and stuff like that was a very distinct experience from the open world titles that followed it. And so a lot of people want them to go back to that Arkham Asylum style. This one is obviously very much not that. But personally, that's not something I ever got hung up on, because pretty much anything Batman I'm happy with. And I didn't mind the more open world titles. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, Arkham Asylum was very Metroidvania in a sense, where the other, I like to include Origins, so the other 3 were very, well, Origins was actually a little bit more closed off, actually.
Yeah, it was tighter.
For some reason, so if you didn't, you know, if you wanted more, there it is. So you pretty much got 2 and 2, in my opinion. Yeah. So, but yeah, the other one's a little bit more open world. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I was worried that the game was too, like, dark and gloomy, but we got some more of that color, some more of that cosmic pop later on, especially with these 4 characters. Sorry, they all have distinct, you know, Batgirl's very bright yellow, Nightwing's with the blue, you know, you had Robin with the red, and you know, his usual colors. Then you got Red Hood, who's just, you know, a leather jacket and a red mask. So who I love Red Hood so much. So I'm super excited. I'm in the same boat as you. It's like these characters will play faster than Batman, obviously, because Batman's obviously a little bit more tanky. So I can't wait to get my hands on this. 2021, I was hoping it'd be a little bit sooner. It'd be cool to get this out at launch. But
yeah, I was hoping, but it looks like it's going to be a little bit more before that.
Yeah, I mean, they're showing it now. I want maybe spring.
Optimistically. Yeah, hopefully.
Optimistically. Again, we don't know what COVID did to the team exactly, so.
And then there's Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Now,
Yep, so
how
we got
about that trailer?
So finally, we got the true. We saw the full title because it's been back and forth. Is it called just Suicide Squad? Is it Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League? Is that just what the panel's called? So the title finally is just Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and it's also in the Arkham universe. They confirmed that, so super happy about that. You got your Harley Quinn. You got King Shark. I mean, so it's weird because you went from a more darker, serious toned, the Knights trailer to Sunset Overdrive. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. Super bright. You got Harley being Harley, and then so I don't know. It showed some teasers of Brainiac doing something, and we see Superman. It's not a spoiler. That's what the trailer is. He lasers somebody. He lasers what seems to be just a regular human, and they're like, oh. And so you see that the main focus obviously is killing Superman.
Yeah, because there's some kind of possession mechanic going on right now.
Yeah, obviously. So I think this is fantastic. I mean, we were talking about this even when it was just rumors and concept. I think this is great. I think this is absolutely fantastic. One thing I did not see coming is this is a next gen only.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that makes 2022. Yeah.
If you look at the end of the trailer, it doesn't say PS4. It says PS5 and Xbox Series, and obviously PC or whatever.
That's what I like to see.
But because I even doubled back to it, I'm like, did I see that right? And I zoomed in, and I'm like, it's super dark, and unless I really missed it, or maybe it was just that trailer. But from my understanding, this is a next gen only. It said PS5 specifically. I didn't see a PS4 logo.
That makes sense for 2022.
So for 2022, yeah, it kind of makes sense. I'm surprised they're showing it this early. I was a little worried when they confirmed the 2022 release date. I was like, oof. Now I got to hear about it for possibly another 2 years. You're going to be teasing this game. And I had super flashbacks to Avengers, which was announced forever ago. And then we never heard nothing. I'm like, I'm a little worried. But again, in a year that, assuming 2021 that E3 will happen in a certain way or some of these events will happen a certain way, we'll obviously be seeing the game. I just hope we don't see too much. Again, we saw no gameplay. It was all, pre-rendered that looked fantastic. I know you were loving that art style. Looks I watched it, I was like, oh, he's freaking out about this.
Look at Harley's design. Look at her.
I know.
What?
So, super, super excited for this. Again, I'm glad we didn't see gameplay because of how far the game is off until release, but I'm just curious on how this game plays because you can't just copy and paste what Knights is doing. So that was my only thing. I was like, well, as of right now, it's a 4 in each game. How much crossover lap is there going to be? And we'll see how it all works out, but I'm super excited for Kill the Justice League.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so small update continuing on from last week. Apple versus Fortnite, which we knew this wasn't going away. I didn't think it'd bubble up the way it has been. So really quickly, so Epic is attempting to bring back Fortnite to the App Store using a temporary restraining order after Apple banned the game earlier in the month. Apple promptly responded to the Epic's move, asking the judge presiding over the case to block the request, which has been reported by NBC News. The temporary restraining order, if granted, would allow Fortnite to run to the App Store against Apple's wishes, alongside its controversial direct payment system. Apple claims that Epic has no bias for temporary restraining order, accusing Epic of bringing all alleged injury upon itself, citing, belligerent behavior with the Free Fortnite campaign, with the parody, with them specifically. They're even having a event with an Apple called the Apple Cup or Free the Fortnite Cup or something wild, and obviously parodying the commercial from 1984 with the big Apple head and stuff like that. So I thought this was going to be quickly solved. I knew there would be some courts and stuff like that. I thought money would speak. I did not think it was going to get to this point where this is a pretty hefty battle, and it's going to be one of the bigger ones in this industry and this ecosystem for the year. Because as you know, the gaming industry has really been cleansing themselves of different, behind the scenes indecent actions and stuff like Ubisoft. Not to get into that whole story. Who knew that this would be coming out of nowhere? That Epic Games is taking on Apple, and Google. There, some reason that people always like to leave out the Google. Google is
They're getting
also
it too, yeah.
getting it too, even though it is because of Android devices being so open, you can just go to epic.com and download Fortnite separately. Apple, you don't have that option right now. I was super surprised it's getting to this point where they're both like Apple's like, listen, you guys did this to yourself. It's like, you knew our rules, and even Apple came out and being like, listen, you guys wanted special treatment because you guys were Fortnite. And it doesn't work that way. And then you got Epic being like, well, you don't want to work with us, and it's just like this huge mess, and it's really getting to the point where it's he said, she said over money, and I'm really surprised that it escalated to this kind of aspect. Were you caught off guard by this at all?
Well, it's one of those things where we do live in like a day and age where social media pressure and campaigns changes the world. We've seen people arrested. We've seen corporations be like massively affected by just the court of public opinion swaying in your direction or swaying in another direction. And so that has a lot of power. And it seems like in many ways Epic tried to weaponize that power. That it's like, we're going to have an ongoing court case, but as long as we're not crossing certain boundaries, if we can get everyone on our side to push against Apple, maybe that might be enough for them to reverse course before this whole situation is even cleaned up in the court case. It looked like they tried to weaponize a lot of the people to push them, and then kind of like a social media campaign type way, which, I mean, I don't blame them. It's worked in the past. We've seen this happen. But at the same time, it's like what you use is a very bold way to go about things, could be ultimately what bites you in the butt. This very quote-unquote belligerent style might lead to them not being ruled in their favor because they've acted so out of pocket. I don't know. Ultimately, if I had to guess, if this cleanly wraps up in a way, ultimately it's Apple's ecosystem, it's Apple's store, so they quote-unquote have a right to sell or to take a cut of what they want to in terms of sales. However, maybe the resolution to this is, well, allow us on the Apple ecosystem to offer our app outside of the App Store. So, like, everything on the App Store, yeah, okay, fine, you take your cut. It's your App Store. However, let us offer our app through our website and have it downloadable on Apple phones, because you know that's something you can't do. But the problem is, Apple devices are known worldwide for their inability to download things from online. Yeah. It's the nature of the devices. I mean, you're talking about reversing courses in terms of like their UI and the way everything works to appease to Epic's demands. But the thing is, this case has like immense implications for literally every developer who's on the App Store. This is going to affect players in terms of how much we're charged. If ultimately the court rules in the favor of Apple and they're going to take the 30% chucks, I wouldn't be surprised if you see an increase in prices for V-Bucks. I wouldn't be surprised, because if they're like, okay, if they're going to take a 30% chuck, no matter what, we're charging 30% more, period. Because we're going to make our money, and we know how much we can make on this, and Apple, they're ruled in our favor. There's nothing we can do in here, so Epic's going to get their money. But at the same time, I mean, again, this is only going to result in these companies pulling further and further away from each other. The fact that a company as big as Epic is reliant on Google and Apple is not going to ever sit well with them. And we've talked about this before, but ultimately, I'm sure things are going to splinter and things are going to consolidate. That's just the natural course of technology. Everybody's going to start their own web store, just like everybody started their own streaming platform, just like everybody tried to get exclusives, and then eventually things flop. Nobody's in your ecosystem, and they consolidate into, again, like 2 or 3 platforms. So I think we're just headed towards the great splintering. That Epic's going to start their own store, and they're going to start their own store, and Activision's going to start their own store, because nobody wants anybody else to take a cut of their profits. And then eventually things are going to be so splintered that everybody's playing in a million different places, where just the most successful places are going to thrive and everywhere else is going to fall. And we've seen this before. So it's going to be, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, and it's going to get really annoying for the average player before things cleanly wrap up. But let the big boys fight it out, and they'll sort something out. I'm sure. Whether a payout, whether it's some backdoor deal, they're going to figure something out when they both start losing money on this. Because you best believe that Apple makes a tremendous amount of money through Fortnite. And Fortnite makes so much money by being able to be on Apple devices. So it's in both of their best interest to clean this up somewhat. So they're gonna figure it out, whether it be some kind of settlement or something.
Yeah, and then generally I would have said it won't last that much longer, but obviously it's already lasted longer than I expected. But like you said, they don't want all the kids all those new iPads coming out, and people aren't going to be able to play Fortnite on it. All these new iPhones won't be able to play Fortnite on it. It's all money. Unfortunately, it is just all money. So we'll have to see what they decide to do.
Yeah, I'm sure by next week we'll have a whole bunch of updates on that for you guys.
Yeah. Yep.
So I guess we can move on to the loose topic to wrap up the show. And this is going to be a really interesting discussion. This is going to offers us the opportunity to cover some stuff that kind of broke when we weren't doing the podcast. So we're moving into next gen, and we've had a lot of next gen talks with the PS5 and the Series X, and also the way the Switch kind of is going to work in with that. But there are other players at work here. So the Intellivision Amico, the Atari VCS, the Playdate, and the Stadia will all also be present the next generation. Obviously, the Stadia is out. The other 3 devices have yet to be released. So I was going to ask first, what are your thoughts on each of these consoles respectively, and what impact do you think they'll have on the ecosystem, if any? And then after that, we could talk about which do we think will even find success amongst all the juggernauts like PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo.
Yeah, so it's going to be a very cannibalistic year for technology, for game-wise in general, because like you're saying, these are 3 more devices. Stadia's still also there. We all know how we feel about Stadia. On top of that, you're going to have the 2 juggernauts coming out, and you never know. Nintendo could come out of nowhere and be like, yeah, we're doing a Switch Pro, Switch whatever.
Yeah.
You never know. So, Nintendo's in its own world doing its own thing. Now, for these devices, I'm very mixed because I was doing research this morning, obviously before the show, because I needed to familiarize. The information I've been getting from this stuff is actually just from the NeoVintage news that you do. So that's where I got most of my stuff.
Every Saturday on NeoVintage.
Yeah.
Games.com.
Yeah, on your YouTube channel, guys. Jabro puts up the NeoVintage news, and he puts things that I miss sometimes, and we talk practically all week.
Deep cuts.
Yeah, so it's in produce. So like the Amico, which is the one I'm most excited for, I would say, more to see what it is, because it's almost in a sense that it's almost I don't want to say an indie machine, because that gives off big Ouya vibes, and
yeah,
I think this is going to be way different, but I think they're going to exist. And I think of all of them that I think they are going to succeed to an extent, I think it will be the Amico, the Intellivision. Because Playdate is very niche, that's the one with the crank, and it's a little bit different. I just don't know. It's such a weird system because it's an open system, allowing side loading of games that are not part of of its season and all that stuff, and it's very open, a lot of these ideas, but a lot of these games that we've seen for them are all, I think the only games we've seen for the Playdate are the 6 that are going to come preloaded, I want to say. So it really depends what they end up doing with it. There are a lot of these smaller titles that could run on some of these other systems. I think they're going to cannibalize themselves. I think it's going to be Playdate versus Amico versus the Atari VCS. Because, the Atari VCS is, though some of the models look like the old Atari, it's not taking cartridges. This is not a NES Classic in a sense. Which, that was one confusion, because I thought that for a little bit, and then I really looked into it. I'm like, so this is not a... those exist. You see them in, like, Walgreens for $20 and stuff like that, and it's nonsense. I think, some of these systems are doing some interesting things. I think some of the pricing's a little weird. And I know that's something you discussed before, where some of these systems are wanting to sell for $250, $300, and above. But they haven't been super upfront on what they're going to give out. And that's where even I'm still confused. I'm like, wait, what are we playing on these systems? Because when I see this stuff, like I just said, I just get Ouya flashbacks. Because I'm like, well, what are you playing? You're not going to be showing, like, I use Fortnite as an example. I was like, well, is Fortnite gonna be on here? But it's like, this is not what this system is for. So I think in a year where people want bang for their buck, they want like a lot of games, and they want the best games. So I know this is really in your court. What's your diagnosis on the way these systems are going to be?
Yeah, so I've spoken quite a bit on the Intellivision Amico. And as I read more about it and hear a lot of people's perspective, and I want to shout out all the Intellivision Amico fans down in the comment section of that one video I did.
Yeah.
Great dialogue there. And they really kind of, I wouldn't say they changed my perspective, but they opened up my idea of just the family gamer.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means. And they did bring up some interesting ideas that I didn't consider. The fact that there are stuff on the Switch ecosystem that are not family friendly. And I guess my mind was always kind of shaped to what Nintendo had been for so long that I kind of lost sight of what they've become. Where it really is open for everything. Yes, there are the smaller phone experiences, family friendly. But you cannot say that any of the major three offer a top to bottom family friendly console. So the Intellivision Amico, when I was saying they don't really fill a lane that is empty, they really do. And whether they see success or not, I can't say. I want it to succeed because I have a tremendous respect for Intellivision. But again, it's tricky to break into the game industry and come back after all these years, especially with PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo getting so much traction and just dominating millions and millions and millions of consoles. For anyone to break in there is going to be tough. So I think the Amico has its niche. I think they're in many ways doing everything they need to be doing. What do you want them to do? They have a pretty well-designed console, it looks like. A cool proprietary controller that doesn't look like anything else, so it's very unique. There are exclusives. They're forging relationships with third-party people. They're doing everything on paper that they should be doing. The only critique I guess I have is, are these experiences going to really move the needle? In many ways, they look kind of like phone games. But at the same time, I've seen the dialogue of some people are really feeling that kind of nostalgic, bring me back to those Xbox arcade type era. There's a niche for that. I didn't consider that. So I think there's a lot going for the Amico. Is it gonna see the amazing success that a Nintendo console would? Of course not. But I think if they could just move enough consoles in relation to what they produce and get that into the homes of people who are interested in and get the word out there, get that into the stores, have those impulse buys going, I can see success for this. I really can. The Atari VCS, and I know some people have taken issue with this, until I see that console, it's vaporware. It's a scam. I don't buy it. I really don't. Like, they've pushed this off a million times. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, finally it's out there. Oh, for release? No, dev kits. So all this time, dev kits? They've shown us the UI a couple times. They've shown us some flashing lights. Okay, cool. You're running something from 79. That's awesome. And they have some cool puzzle games going on there. But again, like I don't believe in the VCS being anything more than vaporware until they start getting those into the hands. Like thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have financed this console and put money into Atari's hands. Keep in mind, first off, this is not Atari from the 80s. These are people who own Atari's name. That's one important difference. Yeah. This is not the Atari 2600 people. This is a whole new company. Then on top of that, they take all these people's money. They've missed multiple deadlines. I haven't seen any exclusives or any interesting games that, hey, Amico, say what you want about them. They've shown off games. Whether you're impressed by them or not, that's an entirely different situation. They've shown off Amico exclusives. Earthworm Jim, the new Earthworm Jim game, is Amico exclusive. That's impressive. Now, whether you think that game's a load of crap or what, that's for you to decide. But the VCS, like, they're not showing anything, so I don't even factor it in because I think it's a whole bunch of nonsense, and I see some people really excited for it, and I pray and hope for you that you guys get your consoles, but I do not think you're going to... I think the Atari VCS, when that comes out, is going to make the freaking VCS look like the Series X. Like the VCS is going to flop like hell. It's going to make the Ouya look amazing. It's done. Playdate, I have a lot of faith in. I think they're hitting an amazing niche in the same way the analog is, where it's not for everybody. But the people who want it and the people who can get their hands on, I don't think they're going to have any problem moving units. I think they marketed it in the perfect way to the weird indie retro community who like these alternative experiences. And they're obviously very open to playing around with weird stuff by the fact that they literally have a Doom port on a crank system. And so I think the Playdate is going to do some really awesome things. I think it's going to show up at the conventions. It's going to be that kind of thing. It's going to see the same success you see with consoles like the Hyperkin stuff, where it's not going to be for everybody, but impulse buy, oh, this is really cool. I've never seen stuff like this. It's pushing creativity in a industry that in many ways tries to recycle the same ideas over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I commend Playdate a lot, is because in an industry where everybody's trying to do what everybody else is doing, they're going left and doing something completely different. And yes, did that put them in a situation where they're not going to move 1 million units? Absolutely. But I just appreciate anybody doing something different. Because it's easy to get bored and see the same ideas recycled over and over again when you've paid attention as long as we have to the game industry. But just seeing anybody doing something different, I would like to commend. And then the Stadia we've talked a lot about. And again, what they should be doing, and I know this sounds nuts, they should be doing what Amico's doing. Forging those relationships.
Yep.
And they're just not. I see them making relationships with people, but they're not Stadia exclusives. Everything's timed. The pricing model's all out of whack. Like, I just don't understand what they're doing with Stadia. And on top of that, Stadia in a Void has its issues. And then on top of that, you add the fact that it's Google, who are notorious for abandoning things. And that's just facts. That's not me picking on Google. It's just there's a literal website dedicated to every frickin' project that they've abandoned in the past 25 years. Or the 20 years or whatever. So it's like, I mean, I hope Stadia succeeds because I know a lot of people who have invested into that platform. But they're just not doing what they need to be doing. And they need to be on their P's and Q's with xCloud coming up on the horizon. And Microsoft and Sony working together, very obviously, to not let Stadia gain traction. And hey, I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years we get a documentary of Google execs being like, do you know that Microsoft and Sony were blackballing us and keep it? I wouldn't be surprised if they're working to tank those. But that's for y'all to figure out. Again, you're Google. Flex some of that skill. I mean, you guys freaking run the world. You guys are Skynet for all. You guys are gonna make the next Terminators. Yeah. You could make a couple relationships with Bethesda. You know what I mean? So, I'm not buying into Stadia, but of these different platforms, I think the Amico and the Playdate can find their niche. They can do it, and I think in many ways they're doing everything they need to be doing at the scale they need to be doing it. And none of them pose existential threats to PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo. The only one that possibly could have was Stadia, but they dropped the ball. So I think all of these platforms can exist, and while PlayStation, Xbox wore it out, Nintendo does its own thing with the indie games, with the Nintendo first-party games. The Amico can have these arcadey family experiences, and the Playdate can play with weird indie crank titles that these developers in Seattle make. I think these all can really succeed in their own ways.
Yeah, I feel the same way, especially with even like Playdate's release cycle. So it's like you buy the season, and then like every couple of weeks they give you a game automatically, and like that's such a weird thing.
Yeah, it's awesome, right?
But it makes sense because now everyone's gonna be playing. It gave me like it's almost like and I saw this mainly with Fall Guys, whatever,
yes,
on PlayStation
Guys.
Plus. It's full of people right now because it was given. Everyone got it on the same day. Obviously, people who get that game way later on, the population won't be there. So I'm thinking the same thing for some of these games. You know, for everyone who got the Playdate, you're playing all these games on the same day because you know what day it releases and the way they're doing the seasons. And I think Season 1 comes with the purchase of it. So it just makes sense. And I agree with you completely with the Amico, where it's like, I could see this for a different group family. Obviously, we're in like the ecosystem. We want to play the new games and stuff like that. But for the people who just casually want to have like these small, completely family-friendly games that are more akin to mobile games, it makes way more sense because you got to remember, like, the Switch right now is just shovelware. You're getting dating sims. You're getting very not child-friendly anime.
Yeah, you're
games.
getting all the Vita leftovers. The people who abandoned Vita.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of these games that, you know, even Sony was censoring some of these games, and then Nintendo was like, well, you can come here, do whatever you want. And you're getting a lot of, like, M-rated games, and some that should maybe even be more. And it's like, it's not as friendly as you think. People think Nintendo, people think Mario. And it's like, well, it'd be easy to have a machine, let's say, like, listen, you don't really have to worry that much. These games are smaller in scope. They're not going to be over sexualized, over violence, and stuff like that. So that's why I think I agree with you that those two are going to be like the big hitter, the big hitters in their own space. They're obviously not trying to go against. Playdate wasn't like we're going to outsell the PS5 or whatever. It's obviously not that. That's what Stadia was trying to do, and again, we could always go on about Stadia and on what they just completely, shot themselves in the foot. But I also agree with the Atari. It's like trying to prepare for this topic. I was like, why can't I find information on this?
Because they're fake news.
I'm like, why is it that just people gave Atari money and then we've seen a shiny box with some, like you said, with a few lights? I'm like, hold on, wait. I'm trying to look at what games they have, and I'm like, what the? And I almost called you because I was like, bro, how do I talk about this? Because why does this look like just concept art? Like, where is it? Where is it? And now they use COVID as excuses, and this was supposed to be been out. So
trust me, your research and your reaction that you're having right now is exactly the reaction everyone's having to this.
All right,
because I feel we don't know what this is.
I'm sitting there looking. I'm like, all right. I was like, Playdate. I knew was the crank, and then I was like, Amico. I knew because you talked about it on the news, and then I'm, Stadia. We all know, and then I'm like, why is it that I can't get some stuff on Atari? And then I'm glad you just really recapped this because there's not information.
Because they don't exist. Because it's a fake idea. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think it's literally a scam. I wouldn't, because I called it a scam, and somebody's like, no, I don't think it's a scam. I think it's really coming out. No, I think it's going to come out. I just think it's going to be terrible. I think it's Ouya too. Like, that's honestly what I think.
It's definitely Ouya. It's definitely that one has the most Ouya feel to it. The most Kickstarter horror stories. If you ever want a good time, go look those up. Those are hilarious.
Yikes.
Except for the people who lost money, it's not hilarious. But
yeah,
it's just a weird situation because I think now more than ever, you have the big hitters, you have the big three, and PC gaming and stuff like that, and some of these small gaps, are going to be filled in and need to be filled in because there are customers that aren't just not going to go buy a PlayStation because they don't want it, but they don't mind playing the next little platform jumping game that you can maybe get on the Amico, or just trying to beat high scores with your family and stuff like that. Like my parents aren't into gaming at all, but they did used to like these old games where they could just play a simple thing and get high scores and try to beat each other's high scores. My mom and my dad used to have a big competition on things like that, and
yeah, the Amico would be perfect for them.
I mean, my parents, they like these super old school classic games where it's like, this is what you got to do, and you just got to get really good at it. My dad's not going to sit down and play God of War. Under no circumstances my dad going to do that.
Arcadey, no objectionable content. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I always think back to one night where my dad was like, hey, I saw you had Sonic Spinball, can I play? And he sat there just cranking it out. And I'm like, man, you know how many Sonic Spinball sort of clones and successors and their own games there are? And like, he probably would love that.
Yeah, well, and I did just think of this idea where in gaming, in terms of games, we've had this idea that there's AAA games, there's A games or indie games, and then there's AA games, and there's kind of room for all different scales, and it helps you temper your expectations and understand what you're happening here. But for consoles, we haven't had that, and it's AAA or nothing. But at one point, if you go especially back to the 80s and 90s, there were tiers. Where, like, you'd have Atari dominating, you'd have Magnavox dominating in the 80s. But then you'd have other people, like ColecoVision were doing their thing, and Television were doing their thing. Everybody kind of had their own little place in the market for doing things. You got the Turbo Graphics. Everybody else were in there offering their own little experiences, and there was room enough for everybody because everybody was doing a different thing. And as things have gone forward, it's like you need to be billion-dollar company or nothing. Or, you're falling out. And I think the era of the AA game console or the A game console might be coming. This might be it. That this next generation where the tiers of game consoles offering different experiences for different people at different price levels and different wishes can all coexist in the same way. So I think that's an interesting thought that we'll see if ultimately by the end of the gen if it comes to fruition. But I honestly have a lot of faith in some of these companies to offer something different enough that they'll find success.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Because you're not going to out PlayStation,
No, of course.
But you can be the Amico. Ain't nobody doing that. So, the shout out to them. I wish them nothing but success, and we'll see how next gen plays out, because it's a very weird generation we're walking into, where we're seeing a lot of firsts, but at the same time we're seeing a lot of stuff we haven't seen in a very long time as well.
Exactly.
All right, so that was the episode. A lot of stories, long episode, 90 minutes we've been hitting lately. Look at us.
Yeah.
And
came back with a vengeance.
Oh yeah, we got a ton of stories, and it's only going to intensify, to be honest. We're heading into September, which means that all the new games are going to start coming out. More spoiler casts are going to start coming out, and we're, in terms of a game production standpoint, not in a societal way, but in a game production standpoint, we're kind of heading towards the next stage of the COVID era, where people are starting to get back to work, and obviously societally, that's a whole different discussion. But in terms of game development, things are starting to ramp up again, which means that announcements, vertical slices, releases, all these things are going to start going, back into fruition, and going into the next generation. Launch games are going to start happening, and hardware is going to start launching, and it's going to be a wild ride.
I mean, we have two giant, two of the biggest hardware, you have Sony and Microsoft both launching their new system, and they've both, we didn't talk about it on the news, Sony reiterated that they're like, the PS5 is coming out this year.
Oh yeah.
They were pretty much like, stop asking, it's coming out this year. And I was like, all right, it's just,
that confidence at this point, is back.
That's a lot of confidence. We're at the end of August, guys. As of recording right now, it's the 23rd, and we don't have a release date or price on either system. You gotta think these systems are coming out within 2 to 3 months, and we don't have a price.
That means that the console release date, the pre-orders, like, things are gonna be happening fast, months apart, like a month or two apart.
I'm at the point where, because they, I don't think, I'm really headed for the PlayStation 5, and they said that they won't just open pre-orders, so they're probably gonna announce the day the pre-orders go live. I might have to take like a day off of work so I can be home.
I'm terrified for that day.
And my gut instinct is I'm gonna just get what I can, whether it be disc or not, or be the full digital version, and then I can work my way out afterwards. I just need to secure a console. It's gonna be a crazy time. We're gonna have a lot of content coming out, and it's just gonna be exciting. And this is not even including the stuff that's not announced yet.
And it's like, I don't mean to be mean. I'm not worried about my ability to get a Series X. Like, I'm not being mean, but we know what time it is. We know the demand's a little different. So I plan on getting everything, but the Series X I'm not as paranoid about. It's the PS5. Like, oh my god, that's gonna be rough. I know it is.
That's why I'm gonna settle for what I can get.
I mean, they're coming off 100 million sold. Like, there's a lot of people who want this console.
Exactly.
So we'll have more news for you guys next week. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I am Jabril, and I am with
Steve. I hope you guys enjoyed.
And this is the NeoVintage podcast. See you guys.